bonded pairs of cats and getting them adopted. The wild thing is, I actually learned in this research that finding a true bonded pair of cats is actually really rare, because shelters will say that they have multiple bonded pairs of cats, or they will often say they have a bonded pair of cats, but in reality, in many cases, these cats actually aren't really bonded. One or both of them just has anxiety, but once they are separated in different homes, since that would get them adopted faster, they do adjust just fine, and they're perfectly fine. The way that people with a lot of animal shelter experience have found to test if a cat is truly bonded is by separating them. Find a convenient time. If one of them has to go to the vet, especially for an extended period of time, or a surgery and they gotta stay in the vet for a day or two, see how the other cat reacts. If they truly get distressed, they're not using the litter, they're not eating, then chances are they are a true bonded pair. But in the vast majority of cases, that isn't the case. If you've seen my videos, you know that I have a pair of cats. That's why I started looking into potential advice for helping them get adopted, and also learning about what struggles go into getting a bonded pair of cats adopted and what that all looks like. And my pair of cats, I can't go into it, but they have a history. They've been together before being in the shelter, and they are definitely bonded. One of them got distressed when separated from the other, and I tried to take them to a adoption event, and I only got one of them in the cage. The other one just ran away and played really good hiding games. And someone was nice enough to drive the one I got in the cage over to the shelter for the adoption event. It was Memorial Day weekend, so it actually turned out very few people came at all, because people were enjoying their Memorial Day weekend rather than, using it as an opportunity to adopt cats. So that was a flop. But when I had Samuel driven to that adoption event, Preeti, who was too nervous to get into her cage, she basically curled up in the corner of my closet the whole time, as far as I can tell. So that really showed me that these guys are truly bonded. They really need to be with each other. Cats that are supposedly in bonded pairs may enjoy each other, but they get over it surprisingly quickly, even when they are forced to separate. Kittens, you should definitely adopt them out / foster them in pairs, because at that age, just like with human beings, in elementary school, socialization is super important. Even if a good amount of cats grow up to be more independent and actually prefer not to live with other cats, it's still important to pair them up when they are just getting started as kittens and learning how to be a kitten, how to use the litter box, how to explore different areas and get used to new areas. It's still important for them to have a fellow kitten going through the same experience. So definitely kittens should stay paired up, but as adults, bonded pairs that truly stay bonded are actually fairly rare. The vast majority of cats aren't truly in a bonded pair. Whether or not a bonded pair of cats are truly in a bonded pair, they will have a longer stay in the shelter / foster system just by virtue of being two cats. Because think about it from an adopter's perspective, they may be able to afford the vet, the food, and all the expenses of taking care of one cat, but it can be, even in a high cost of living place like where I am, where a lot of people do have higher salaries. Not always, definitely, but even in a place like this, not everyone makes a huge amount of money. So they may not be able to, or they may not want to pay to take care of 2 cats, just on the financial side of things. And they may not want, even if they can afford, they may not want multiple cats because it's their first time taking care of cats. I will say that I spend a little bit of extra money at the end of the day on wet food specifically and dry food because there are 2 cats. So I don't, as a foster, have to worry about expenses. That's at least part of the reason I'm a foster and not a full-on adopter, because I don't have to pay for the vets. I don't think I could afford it. So I am happy to just save as many cats as possible through fostering them and paying for their food. But I can understand where people are coming from with I can't afford pets. I can't afford multiple pets or even one pet. But in general, cats will spend, and dogs. I don't know if they're paired dogs. I don't know if they're dog bonded pairs, but they too would take longer to be adopted just because it would generally be more expensive. If you're worried though about needing to spend more time playing with them because you have multiple cats, they do keep each other entertained. That's the big plus of taking in 2 cats. Again, whether they're truly bonded or not, basically they will still entertain each other if they have spent enough time with each other where they get along well with each other, bonded or not. You could be put in a weird situation where if you take one to the vet one day and you keep the other at home and the other is fine, so you see that they're not truly bonded, it may be difficult to tell the shelter, hey, these cats aren't really bonded. They don't really need to be adopted together, and it might be easier to get them adopted separately. Again, it really depends on the situation and the shelter and how they do things. But again, I know that Samuel and Preeti are truly bonded and they would not do well without each other. But this is just to keep in mind. If you have a bonded pair, that may be okay going off separately, especially if one is okay being in the house with other cats and the other not so much. They can fit in different homes. Even if they're separated, they might do well in different home situations. But again, it's really a case-by-case basis. There's the possibility that they stay in shelter forever if they're bonded and you can't find someone willing to adopt them both. But even if you get them adopted, there have been issues that shelters have seen where a family that adopts both of them turns around and tries to rehome one of them. And I'm sure the shelter has their ways of figuring out or coming across that kind of stuff being attempted, but it is something that does end up happening, because even if people on paper say they want to adopt both of them, they may truly not be interested in one of the cats. And I'm not sure if every shelter charges an adoption fee. My shelter, you have to pay $160 or $170 for each cat, and that includes still, if they're a bonded pair, you still gotta pay for them individually. So if you have to pay any kind of big fee like that, I do not understand why someone would pay that money just to do that. But if you got the cats for free, I guess it would be easier to stomach that. But still, I wouldn't trust anybody with any cat if they're willing to just turn around and rehome a cat that fast, man. Rehoming a cat at all, I wouldn't trust that person unless they had some behavioral reason they just couldn't take care of that specific cat. I wouldn't be able to trust somebody who rehomes a cat to be responsible for another cat again, I don't think. Or some families may adopt a pair of cats and then later realize that they couldn't actually afford the vet bills for both of them. That can happen after adopting a single cat too, but it's all the more difficult finding yourself in a rough place if you actually adopted 2 cats and can't afford the vet bills for them. It is sad if you see cats sleeping together, cuddling together, and the idea of separating them can be really sad. But it's either that or making them both suffer shelter life far longer than they might have needed to if they would actually realistically be okay separated in good homes for each cat. With a lot of these bonded pairs, the bond, if it's not a true bonded pair, it often ends up being the case that the bond is very one-sided, as we would call it in human terms. It's only one cat that truly leans on the other cat, and the other cat is a lot less involved. I don't want to say they could care less, but they just aren't relying on the cat the way the other cat is relying on them. So that is also something to consider that could be going on with a supposed bonded pair of cats. Like I said before, depending on the shelter, there may be strict policies about bonded pairs the shelter is taking care of. When people take cats to shelters, they may say that, oh, these 2 cats are bonded. But when the shelter actually, works with the cat and figures out their behavior patterns and such, it turns out the cats really could care less about each other. It's a mutual, and that makes it easier for the shelter to list them as separate cats, good with being adopted into homes independently. And the shelter can figure out from there if either cat is okay living with other cats, or if they prefer truly being independent cats in a home. It's kind of funny. Some cats will be okay with living with dogs, but not other cats. They want to be a true independent other cat. They may even be okay with little kids or kids in general. A lot of cats are too easily startled, so they say don't have them in your house if you have little kids. Don't adopt them. But some cats are fine with little kids, but not other cats. It's kind of wild. You may see even senior pets bonded, supposedly, but they aren't actually bonded, or it's a one-sided bond. That's been seen at shelters. Also, some people may be hesitant to take in multiple cats because they may live in an area, in a apartment or in a house where they don't feel like there's enough room for both cats to have their own space. One of my friends wants cats but doesn't want to adopt where they live right now because they want to ensure that both cats have a good amount of space to decompress, which is really respectable. You can significantly expedite the timeline for a bonded pair of cats to get adopted, whether you're a shelter or a foster. If you market them really well, you'll be able to have a much better chance of getting them adopted super fast and letting them get on with the rest of their lives with their forever home. There are people who have adopted a pair of cats and it's worked out really well. They keep each other company and the family gets to watch these 2 cats actually grow up together, remain close with each other, and truly form that bond. If the bonded pair of cats, whether they're truly bonded or not, if they're senior citizen cats, so over 7 years old, or one or both of the cats have special needs, whether it's a special diet they need or some kind of condition, maybe one of them is blind, maybe one of them gets a lot of ear infections, that can make it all the more difficult to find someone willing to take in both of those cats if one or both of them has those special needs or is going up there in age. But one person actually was able to see a senior bonded pair of cats get adopted by an old woman who wanted the cats as company. So they were both in a similar part of life, if you will, so it worked out for both of them. There are people out there who have experience with cats in special situations, so all hope is not lost in finding cats with special needs a good home with experienced pet owners who can actually help the cats. If one of the cat has behavioral issues or needs, they can help that cat work on those after adopting them. Even you as a foster can learn to help that cat overcome behavioral issues. There have been people who help socialize feral cats to the point where they were well behaved enough and domesticated enough that were just normal, cute cats. Then those cats got adopted quickly after the foster felt comfortable listing those cats once they worked through their behavioral issues. People will socialize cats very often. That is the role they'll fulfill as a foster, and once that process is done, the kittens get adopted within a week. So that's definitely something you can do, is be that foster who just socializes kittens and then gets them adopted very quickly. If you're having to socialize feral cats, it can take around 8 months to a year to get them to the point where they're ready to be adopted, where they are truly domesticated and aren't going to be a handful for the average person. You may have a senior bonded pair of cats that only stay in fostering for a month and then they find their forever home. Natural secondhand lights really is a huge game changer for getting good, appealing pictures of cats. If the cats are very photogenic, they could end up being adopted almost immediately. You could have senior cats with personalities that may be adopted in 2 months. That was what one person experienced. You could have beautiful cats take months and months until they find their forever home, like Samuel and Pretty. They're adorable cats, but they are taking their time to find somebody who can take care of them, who wants to adopt both of them. But you can have cats like my very first foster. He was a blind 6-year-old cat. Being special needs and a senior, those are both things that can make it less appealing to adopt them. And yet that cat only stayed with me for a weekend, and one day he got himself adopted very fast. It just takes the luck of a draw, or whatever you want to call it, finding the right person, getting that cat in front of the right people at the right time. So the best thing you can do is continue to advertise them in whatever social media you can where people will happen upon their post. Make sure you're putting it in front of an audience, not just relying on hashtags on Instagram to hopefully you get them adopted. You definitely need to post them in a way where you're definitely getting eyes on them with every post. I put them on Nextdoor because I don't really have a Facebook with people in this area. And I have gotten people suggesting me Nextdoor and Facebook groups to try to get into to advertise Samuel and Preeti. So I'm in the process of trying to get in those groups. And I do have a Facebook for Samuel and Preeti, but I haven't found a group before recently that had an active community where I felt it'd be worth putting adverts for them on those communities, because I want to make sure people are seeing those adverts and I'm not just putting adverts in the void. And finally, case in point, There were 7-year-old cats that took months to be adopted because one of them had IBD, irritable bowel syndrome, but once their foster was able to work with them to get that fixed, they got adopted pretty soon after. So I'll leave you with that example and just a lot of information to think about if you're fostering a bonded pair of cats and are trying to get them adopted. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you liked what you see, seeing extra gifts of cats. And I'll be continuing to do my best to improve these videos. Let me know if there's any improvement you'd like to see. Subscribe, ring the bell. Also, hi.